All right.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Whang.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi. Thank you, Emily, for asking me to be here with you today. I first met, give it up for Emily. I first met Emily when I gave a talk at UC Irvine many years ago. It's wonderful to see how much you've blossomed and the great work you're doing. I'm really inspired by you. I would like to start by giving you a little bit of background about my family of origin. My paternal grandfather was named Hwang Chae-kyung. He was a famous Korean Presbyterian minister from Seoul, South Korea.
Amen.
In fact, in the Korean community in the United States, I'm much more famous for being his granddaughter than for being the host of House Hunters. He traveled all over the world preaching. He was very charismatic and funny, and he was controversial for using humor in his sermons. Some of the congregation didn't like it. They would say, "Church no funny." But he would say, "Only way get people stay awake every Sunday." He founded a Korean Presbyterian church in Washington, D.C., and we went as a family every week. He also collected ancient musical instruments from different countries all over the world during his travels. He owned 60 different musical instruments from different countries, and he learned how to play every one of them. He played spherical flutes made out of potatoes. He played the musical saw. Have you guys ever seen the musical saw? You take a saw and you sit down and you put it between your knees and you bend it and you use a violin bow and you can play the saw. He played miniature pipe organs that you blow through. He was a Renaissance man. I will never forget watching him play "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." You guys know that song? On the musical saw at family gatherings. He could play it perfectly, and the joy on his face lit up the room. Every time I hear that song, I think of him. I remember when I was growing up, I was in awe of him. He always made everybody laugh, and I mean gut-wrenching laughter. Even though my grandmother was 100% Korean, she looked Native American and usually had a stern look on her face. Her nickname was Chief. My grandfather was so charming that he could lift up his Hawaiian shirt after a great big meal, expose his belly, slap it, and instead of a scolding, he could get a smile and even a chuckle out of her. When I was a little girl, I liked to sit on his lap and touch his earlobes. He had the longest, softest earlobes. I loved holding his hands because he had such wrinkly, warm skin, and it was comforting to me. It was like his whole life was in his hands. And he smelled like home to me, sort of ancient and sweet, like an old cedar rocking chair. I was his favorite grandchild. He used to call me his genius granddaughter. He was always botching the English language, though. When someone was sharing good news with him, instead of saying, "I'm impressed," he would say, "Oh, I impress you." Also, there's no TH sound in the Korean language, so TH gets changed to S or T, so thank you becomes sank you or tank you. There's also no Z sound in Korean, so it gets changed to a J. When I was growing up, my nickname was Susie, which became Suji, and pizza was pizza, and Jesus was Jesus. As a Presbyterian minister, he said Jesus a lot. Once in the Korean church that my grandfather led when I was in Bible study class as a kid, the Bible study teacher yelled at us, "What is shortest verse in Bible?" Silence. None of us knew. So he repeated, "What is shortest verse in Bible?" Silence again. Finally he yells, "Jesus is wet." What? He repeated it. Jesus is wet. We were all baffled. Why was he wet? He had us turn to the page in the Bible which read, "Jesus wept." Oh, that's why he was wet.
Oh.
My grandfather would also point at things with his middle finger because in Korea that doesn't mean anything bad. So we would have to remind him about that constantly. He would say, my granddaughter, straight A student. She #1 in class. He would say, "No, Grandpa, no, don't do that." He would say, "Suji, come here, let's go upstairs." "No, Grandpa, use your pointer finger." When I was about 8 years old and learning to read and write the Korean alphabet, I decided I wanted to write my grandfather a birthday card in Korean. The Korean word for grandfather is 할아버지. I mistakenly wrote 할아버지, one vowel off, tiny little error. Well, he opens up the card, he reads it, and he falls off his chair laughing. He's cracking up. He spits out the section of orange he's eating. He can't contain himself. His body is convulsing with laughter. I don't understand because I'm 8 years old and my card wasn't funny, it was sentimental and heartfelt. Well, my parents had to explain to me that in Korean, boji means vagina. So I had mistakenly written on his card, "Happy birthday, grand vagina." Isn't that what every minister wants to be called? I also remember after a long, busy day, he would take off his eyeglasses and slowly, methodically rub his eyes with the heels of his hands, sort of like this, I guess to soothe the area where the glasses were resting. I'm not sure why that image has stayed with me all these years, but it gives me chills when I'm having dinner with my parents and I see my father doing exactly the same thing, taking off his eyeglasses and slowly rubbing his eyes with the heels of his hands. Also, my dad looks just like him now. One of the many things Grandpa did was he was a regular guest on the Voice of America radio show, which is the official radio broadcasting service of the U.S. government. It provides a wide range of programming to countries all over the world in 44 different languages. Well, many years after my grandfather had retired from his ministry, he was asked to come back on the Voice of America radio show as a special guest, and he was interviewed in a sort of retrospective about his whole amazing life. The interview took place in Korea, and it was at a broadcast in a studio that had a big conference room table with multiple VIP Koreans all around. There were journalists, politicians, religious leaders, dignitaries. They were all asking him questions about his life and his ministry, and he was in his element holding court. Now, I've heard a recording of this broadcast, which was all in Korean, so I'll translate it for you. The final question they asked him was, "Reverend Whang, what is the secret to eternal life?" And he says, in Korean, he says, "Here is the secret to eternal life." And then his head dropped face first into the table with a loud thump. So then you hear laughter because they all know what a prankster he is. And then you hear silence. And then you hear, "Oh, omono," which means, "oh my God," in Korean. He had an aneurysm and died right then and there. He was dead on arrival at the hospital. Wow. Are you kidding me? Of course he died in the most hilarious, profound, and dramatic way possible. I mean, come on. What's the secret to eternal life? Here's the secret to eternal life. See ya! And on live radio, he really lived by the motto, always leave them laughing. I'm funny because of him. I'm a comedian because of him. I'm a public speaker and now a minister because of him. I'm brave because of him. I live a big life because of him. Do you remember when Princess Elizabeth said, "I am my father's daughter"? Well, I am my grandfather's granddaughter. I remember his funeral was open casket and he looked so peaceful lying there. He was smiling and I wasn't scared. I touched his hands and they still felt warm and soft and wrinkly just like they always did, like he was still alive, because he was. That's just a little background about me. You know a little bit about me more because of my grandfather. So, 4 years ago, I was given 6 months to live. That's what the doctor said. And I said, "No thanks, you can keep that diagnosis." And I found a different doctor. I had cancer, and not just cancer, stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. In case you don't know, stage 4 is the worst. Stage 5 doesn't exist. Stage 5 is you're dead. I know that sounds very dramatic, but don't worry about me because, like Emily said, I am not only alive, but I am miraculously and completely cancer-free. And I don't like to call myself a survivor because that sounds like I'm barely hanging on by a thread. No. I'm a thriver, and I'm living life to the fullest now every day. That's right. So here is my story. Over the past 8 years, I have had breast cancer 3 times because, like most Asians, I'm an overachiever. Right, Emily? What? Did you guys know that 1 out of every 3 Americans is expected to get some form of cancer in their lives? That is a staggering statistic. Okay, in 2006, I was doing a self-breast exam, and I found, ladies, if you don't do this, start doing it. Know what your breasts feel like and know what feels wrong to you. I found a small lump in my left breast. When I got the phone call saying your test came back positive for breast cancer from my doctor, I said, "Wow, this is going to be great material for my stand-up comedy act someday." And she said, "What?" And I said, how is this even possible? My boobs are so small, are you sure? And she said, you need to clear your schedule and come meet with a surgeon right now. So I got a lumpectomy. If you don't know, a lumpectomy is when you just take the lump out of the breast. You don't remove the whole breast. Okay. I named my tumor Igor, and I sent out an announcement to my friends via email saying I gave birth to Igor via C-section. Yay! I did a lot of research on radiation and chemo and decided they weren't for me. I tried different Eastern and alternative treatments. I changed my nutrition. I slept more. I slowed down, and I thought I had left the cancer behind for good. But then a year later, another lump appeared in exactly the same place as the first one. What? This time I chose not to get surgery. I began meditating, doing yoga and qigong, and I tried about 50 different Eastern and alternative treatments, even some illegal ones. I went to Italy and got illegal sodium bicarbonate injections. I traveled the world and spent my life savings looking for a cure. Wow. While many of these things made me feel good and improved my health a little, none of them cured me of cancer. The tumor was the size of about a quarter, and it was protruding from my left breast, with a hard part underneath it, sort of like if you can imagine a fried egg. Yeah. That's what the tumor felt like. I tried treating it with something called black salve, which is a cream that contains bloodroot, which you're supposed to put on your tumor, and it's supposed to basically yank your tumor out by its roots and eject it from your body, like getting surgery without getting surgery. I had done a lot of research about it. It was not expensive, and I thought it was worth a shot. You put it on, you put the cream on the tumor, you put bandages over it, and you leave it alone. It removed the top layer of skin, and the tumor started to push out. Amazing. But then as it started getting bigger and bigger, I realized that I couldn't tell if it was about to fall out or if my tumor was just getting bigger. The tumor had grown to be the size of a grapefruit. I basically had 3 boobs like that woman in the science fiction movie Total Recall. Yeah. Remember that? It looked like I had 3 boobs. I walked around with this giant tumor sticking out of my chest, but I always wore something loose enough so that no one would notice, and I would avoid close hugs. I was in excruciating physical pain from this tumor for about 6 months. Back in the fall of 2008, the tumor was so painful that I hadn't been able to sleep for months. Months. Now, I've always been a sound sleeper and never had problems with insomnia before. I'd also never dealt with physical pain before because I had never been injured in an accident or from playing a sport or from physical violence. So the combination of horrific pain and insomnia was making me feel completely insane. I was reaching my breaking point. Up until now, I had always been a happy, energetic, optimistic person. When did my body become my enemy and some hideous science experiment? Now, I was alone in my house late that night because my boyfriend at the time, let's call him Jackhole, had checked out emotionally and used excuses like, it's inconvenient for me to drive all the way to your place. There's a lot of traffic right now. Oh, my cancer is inconvenient for you? What a coincidence. It's inconvenient for me too. Wow. Anyway, it was around 3 a.m. and I was looking for some extra gauze pads in my house. I needed these gauze pads to soak up the blood and pus that were oozing from my tumor. Now, I'm a recovering clutterer. I don't know if any of you can relate to that. So this can be a challenge, right? To find something in my house can be a challenge. Now, I couldn't find these gauze pads anywhere. I knew they were somewhere, and I became increasingly frustrated. I was looking through a box of stuff on my living room floor, and all of a sudden, I snapped. I started screaming and ripping the box apart and grabbing the things inside of it and throwing them against the walls and breaking things and crying and shrieking at the top of my lungs. Now, I had an adorable and hilarious little dog, a pug named Bonsai, and he sat there frozen in fear. He looked terrified of me for the first time ever. Now, I needed to come up with a solution that would end this pain for good. The physical pain of the tumor and the emotional pain of being abandoned by my boyfriend. And I came up with a great idea at that moment. I'm going to kill myself. Yay! I was so psyched. I had a plan that would solve my problems for good. I'm going to kill myself tonight. Okay, great. I will shoot myself. Do I have a gun? Oh no, I'm a pacifist. Crap. I don't have a gun. Okay, how about this kitchen knife? Wait a minute, that'll be painful, and I'm in pain. The whole point is that I don't want to be in pain. Plus, that'll be bloody, and then someone will have to come over and clean it. Crap, that's not going to work. Okay, what else do people do? I'll hang myself. Yeah, I'll hang myself. Do I have rope? Do I have rope? I'm looking around, I can't find any rope. I find a piece of string. Well, that's not going to work. Crap. Okay, I'll overdose on sleeping pills. Sleeping pills, yay! Wait, I don't take sleeping pills. In fact, I don't have any prescription medication that I can overdose on. All I have is a few Advil. That's not going to kill me. Crap. Okay, how about, oh, I know. I'll drink cleaning solution, right? I'll drink cleaning solution. Perfect. I go to the cabinet. Oh no. I switched to all organic, non-toxic cleaning products. Oh no! Crap! Oh, I'm too healthy. Oh. Okay, I could drown myself. I'll drown myself. I'll fill up the bathtub with water. But how will my head stay down? I bet if I tried to do that, you know, that instinct would kick in, and I need someone to come over and hold my head down. Oh, I don't think anyone's going to do that. I don't think any of my friends are going to do that. Plus, it's 3 in the morning. Crap. I know. I'll get in my car and I'll drive to Malibu, and I'll just drive off a cliff or something. God, that's so far, and I'm really tired. All right, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I could just get in my car and get on the 405 or something and just drive into oncoming traffic. Oh wait, but then I'd be injuring or killing other people, and I can't do that. I don't want to hurt anyone. And I don't want the news story to be that the Asian host of House Hunters died in a car accident, because everyone would assume it's because I'm a bad driver, which I am not. Then I'm thinking, not only am I a failure at curing myself of cancer, I can't even kill myself properly. I'm too healthy now, I don't have anything here I could use to kill myself. And then I look over at Bonsai, and he looked so sad. And I realized I couldn't abandon him. Who would take care of him? I was so exhausted from all the screaming and shrieking and breaking things and crying and looking for a way in my house to kill myself that I crawled into bed, and for the first time in months, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't want to kill myself anymore. So I'm glad I didn't do it. I broke up with Jack Hole, and I started dating an amazing guy named Eric Schwartz. In 2009, I got another lumpectomy. I got this grapefruit-sized tumor removed. The surgery went really well, but about a week later, the incision site, you have to understand, the tumor was really big, and they removed the tumor, and then there was a big hole that they had to sew up. But according to the surgeon, because I don't have a lot of fat or loose skin on my body, it was really stressed out. Do you know what I mean? It was a really tight, sewn up incision, which can really traumatize and stress an incision, and it makes it susceptible to infection. It got infected and it opened up, leaving a giant crater where half of my left breast used to be. My left breast looked sort of like a yin-yang. Half of it was breast, half of it was a crater. The crater was convenient, though, because it also doubled as a change purse. That's my sixth sense of humor. Now, the way that they heal an open crater, if you don't know, is with something called wet to dry dressing, which sounds innocuous, but here's how it works. A home health nurse comes to my house at the beginning of the day, 8 a.m., and she soaks some gauze pads in saline solution, and then she places them inside the crater and then covers it with a bandage. Then 12 hours later at 8 p.m. she comes over again. The gauze pads have now dried and stuck to the inside of the crater. She comes in 12 hours later and rips the pads out of the crater, which removes all the dead skin cells and promotes the growth of new healthy cells. Now let me tell you guys something. There is a type of pain that goes beyond sound. I would just lie there, squeezing, my mom came over from Virginia for I think 2 months, squeezing my mom's hand until I almost broke it, with a single tear streaming down my face. This went on for about 4 weeks, every day, twice a day.
Wow.
Whew. And by the way, it's not just that it was happening, it's that after it happened, you know that in 12 hours, it's happening again. She's coming over again, and again, and again. Now, as I'm lying in bed one day, I remembered seeing something on Oprah about a guy who had cut off the tip of his middle finger, about this much of it, when he was building a model airplane. And his brother was some doctor at the University of Pittsburgh who had invented this magic powder to regrow his finger, including the fingernail. It's a revolutionary new technology called ECM, extracellular matrix powder, which is made out of pig bladders. In case you don't know, pigs are the closest animal in genetic structure, protein-wise, to humans. And extracellular matrix powder creates a scaffolding telling the human body to regrow what used to be there. I wondered if this could be used to regrow part of my left breast. My mother did some research. She called the company, I think it's in Baltimore, and found out that I could order it, and it only cost $800 for what I would need, which is nothing compared to some other things I've tried. And I found a plastic surgeon in Los Angeles to administer it to my wound because they won't sell it to a person, it has to go to a doctor. And guess what? It worked. Yeah. It worked! What? Oinks now, but I don't mind. It's sort of like those 3D printers. I wish I had known about this technology when I was a teenager. Have you guys heard about the 3D printers? There's these 3D printers now that will print an actual 3D thing. I wish I had known about this when I was a teenager. Back then, my bra size was 34AA, which I thought stood for Asian American.
Wow.
On Valentine's Day of 2011, I was with my boyfriend, Eric Schwartz, and his parents. His mom gave me a great big hug and fractured my T10 vertebra. She did not mean to hurt me. She actually loves me. Koreans are the Jews of Asia. Has anyone here ever fractured or broken their back? Okay. Well, let me just tell you. I went to the hospital in an ambulance in excruciating pain. The surgeon said, I can do a procedure called a kyphoplasty that will fix your back and take away your pain immediately. It's a really minor surgery. And I said, yes. Suddenly my bias against Western medicine went out the window. It's amazing how excruciating, debilitating pain can change one's decision-making process. I don't care if you have to cut the heads off of endangered species and stick them into my back. Do it now, please. As I was recovering in the hospital from my back surgery, I found out that the cancer had not only metastasized to my spine, but also to my skull, my sternum, my left hip, my lymph nodes, and both breasts.
Wow.
Oh no. After my back surgery, the doctors recommended that I get radiation on my T10 vertebra because if left untreated, I could become paralyzed. So I said, sure, what time can we start? I also needed hip replacement surgery. So over the course of 6 months, I had back surgery, hip replacement surgery, 6 weeks of radiation, and then 12 weeks of chemo. As I said, I'm an overachiever. Now, I remember being in the hospital recovering from my hip replacement surgery. Remember, this is in 2011. And on the television in my room was the breaking news about that earthquake in Japan. Do you remember that?
Yeah.